Morena, gentlemen. I hope you, your families, and your property are holding up okay during these really tough times. Well, welcome back to Distance Learning. You'll all be experienced campaigners by now with this mode of teaching and learning. If it is the case that at home it's just really not suitable due to extreme impacts from the flooding, and I know too well, having been ripping up carpets over the weekend, that it can be a really tough time at home, and that's preventing you from engaging as productively as you'd like in online learning. Rest assured that we'll have opportunities to patch up any gaps as we get back into in-class teaching. But that said, let's be as productive as we possibly can to set ourselves up for success. Now, last Friday, I set down an activity for you guys to finish for homework, being down to write personal characteristics that an effective leader should possess. Now, here we've got a few examples of leaders on the board. Mr. Musk, Mr. Luxon, we've got Mr. Peters there, Sardern, and we got Mr. Shaw as well. So we've got some political leaders, got a business leader, and we've got some faceless leaders over here. Now here's a bit of a summary of characteristics of an effective leader. They are not, this is not complete in the sense that there are other characteristics that an effective leader can have, and you may have used synonyms, so words that actually mean the same thing, yet they're just written here in these terms. So have yourself a read of that and add to your own list to try build an effective description of the characteristics of an effective leader. And bear in mind, I have seen NCEA Level 2 business questions that ask the student to write about characteristics and explain characteristics of effective leaders. Now, as mentioned in previous lessons, we are going to look at different leadership styles in the business setting. And the first leadership style that we're going to be looking at, gentlemen, is an authoritarian or an autocratic leadership style. I've got a couple of examples here of autocratic leaders in an organization. So a quick little description of what an authoritarian or autocratic leadership style involves, and it's where management or the business leaders make all the decisions in a business without consulting staff. Okay, so our leader makes decisions of what product to produce, how to produce it, who they're going to sell the product to, or who they're aiming to sell the product to, how they're going to try to attract that customer, how to get the product to the customer, so on and so forth. There's not that two-way conversation, feedback loop with staff members. It's the leader knows best. So they issue instructions, they don't seek feedback in most cases. Communication is top down, from the top of the organization down to the employees, down to the workers. And there's not really much of an opportunity for information or feedback to flow back up the organization to those autocratic, authoritarian decision makers. So the boss is always right, so to speak. So here we've got Gordon Ramsay. So for those who are into culinary, chef, he's a chef, and he's an expert chef who is renowned for issuing instructions rather harshly in the kitchen. Now, there's a reason why he has this leadership style, And that's because, one, he's an expert, so he's often the best chef in any kitchen that he goes into. And so what he says is generally right. And also, cooking at premium restaurants, there's a lot at stake. You've got customers who've paid a lot of money, and they expect a premium product to be delivered quickly or not very long to them. And so mistakes or doing things incorrectly at a premium dining establishment could be very, very costly to a business with its reputation. So having an autocratic leader there, making those fast decisions, directing people around, can actually be really appropriate. Because if you let a new young chef, a sous chef, take over various aspects or just do their thing, they might make mistakes that could really harm the reputation of the business. Here, well, you can see it's pretty self-evident. We've got a military context, and I'll let you guys think about why soldiers following the orders of their seniors, their officers, why that might be appropriate in dangerous combat situations. So, given that you're likely not to be in pairs with classmates, you might just have your family pets or your siblings or the rest of your whānau there. Feel free to ask them if you like, but perhaps brainstorm, think about and write down situations, business or otherwise, where an autocratic style of leadership is appropriate or beneficial. And I'd suggest you pause the screen right now, just jot down those situations where an autocratic leadership style is appropriate. Alrighty, so in business studies, we love looking at the pros and cons of things. Helps with our cost-benefit analysis or assessments. And so let's have a look at some advantages of an authoritarian or autocratic leadership style. So it's appropriate where health and safety is a big factor, and that leader, the manager, actually knows the best way to keep people safe. So on our previous slides activity, if you've been writing down the likes of construction, if you've been writing down the likes of forestry, deep sea fishing, the military, you would have been absolutely spot on. Because the more senior managers and leaders in the businesses are the ones who are likely to know the risks and also the best ways in which those risks can be avoided. And if you just let newer, less experienced workers just go about their jobs without much management interference, it could actually be a real health and safety risk, and that could lead to the death of workers. An authoritarian autocratic leadership style is easy for a new manager to learn. They just need to say what they want to do, and the rest of the business or their area of the business just follows. So they don't have to learn those soft skills of getting feedback, getting input from others in their workplace. They don't need to go through that process of assessing information given to them by their staff. They just know that what they say is gospel, so to speak, and that the rest of the business or their team will follow. So it's easy to learn this style. It's appropriate in fast-paced and complicated situations where there is no room for error. So think about that fine dining establishment with Gordon Ramsay there. It's fast-paced. Cooking is incredibly complicated. And if mistakes are made, well, your customers are not going to be happy and could leave a bad review online. Also appropriate if a business is in crisis and decisions need to be made quickly to reduce harms that are being caused by the crisis. So perhaps think about the flooding that occurred at school. Some of you might be aware that the language block, the learning support block, and a few other blocks at school had carpets ripped up and a whole lot of materials taken out of classrooms, and that was done quickly. If those things had been left to sit in those classrooms, more and more damage would have occurred. So water would have leaked further up the walls, the chipboard, and other panels that are on the side of the classroom. There could be more harm to some of the electronics and other teaching resources. So in the crisis that we've recently had, autocratic, authoritarian leadership would have been most appropriate. It's appropriate with inexperienced workers. We've talked about that a little bit. Workers can take some time to become good, proficient at their jobs, and actually it's appropriate that the manager steers that worker around the place, giving them orders until the worker is in a position where they've learnt enough to be left to do their job by themselves. So actually a manager might use an autocratic leadership style for an inexperienced worker, but might use a different one for their workers that have been at the business for a while. Can be effective at managing unmotivated workers. Yeah, so for those workers who are not going to crack into their work, who might get on the old cell phone, the mobile, start looking at their TikToks, if they're not being oversighted, if they're not being directed by the manager, then an authoritarian leadership style might be appropriate to try and get the best out of those workers. Also can be effective issuing orders for low-skilled tasks there as well. So where the worker is not required to think deeply about their job, they are more, to put it crudely, a pair of hands, but of energy. It could be appropriate for an authoritarian leadership style to try and get the best out of those workers. There are disadvantages, of course, and I said we love talking about the pros and cons, advantages, disadvantages, or different things in this course. It's bad for intrinsically motivated workers. So intrinsically motivated means sort of internally motivated. So workers who want to go out and do their best on any day of work, they're going to crack into their jobs. Those workers actually don't need a manager standing over them and barking orders at them. And when they do have such a manager, they actually don't like it because they feel that it's almost insulting to their initiative. Like that worker is always and already going to crack into their work, and the manager just standing over them effectively and telling them what to do is unnecessary, and it actually annoys these workers. An autocratic leader can decrease morale. So morale kind of reflects the culture of a business. It's how people feel about their workplace. They can reduce the team's creativity. So if you've got the manager saying, hey, I'm going to make all the decisions, do all the thinking, well, some workers are going to go, okay, sure, you do all the thinking. And the total creativity of the business is decreased because the workers' thoughts, their ideas, are not included. And this can increase staff turnover. So if a worker's not enjoying that style of leadership, they're just going to leave. There's a bit of a saying that workers don't leave businesses, they leave managers. And if a worker finds that they've got an autocratic leadership style that's not suitable for them, they're simply going to leave the business. And we're going to talk about the costs of staff turnover as we move through this course. Staff can become overly dependent on a leader. So if the leader's making all the decisions and then they are made absent, well, that's going to really harm the business, leave a big gap. And there's a risk that staff are going to complain about an autocratic leader who perhaps they might feel is emotionally harmful to them. Got a video here on the next slide if you guys want to follow that link and have a wee look. Oh, we've got an Auckland Grammar old boy there as well. That's especially relevant. And finally, guys, got a bit of a homework question for you. So 100 words, explain why having good business leaders is good for our communities. Have a good day, guys. Thanks.